Hello, all. I'm Trudy Arriaga, and I am the Associate Dean in the Graduate School of Education here at Cal Lutheran. Proud to teach in the Master's and Doctoral Program in Ed Leadership. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to give you a little bit of information about my research and my most recent book, which is Leading While Female, co-authored with my very dear friends and colleagues, Dr. Stacy Stanley out of Minnesota and Dr. Dolores Lindsay here in California. So I begin by just reminding us that the circles of women around us weave invisible nets of love that carry us when we are weak and sing with us when we are strong. As we did the research of our book, our research was based on intersectionality, feminism, educational leadership, as well as cultural proficiency and equity and allyship. And again, very pleased and proud to present the book to all of you, which is Leading While Female, a Culturally Proficient Approach to Gender Equity, along with my first book, Opening Doors, which is an implementation template for cultural proficiency as well. So just very briefly, what is the compelling data that inspired us to really look deeper into the issues of gender equity and inequities, particularly in educational leadership? You're probably aware that the majority of the teachers in this nation are women. As a matter of fact, 77%. Over 3/4 of the teachers in this nation are women. And you can see the breakdown in regards to the intersectionality of who we are as women in our classrooms throughout our nation. And if it was the case that 77% of the teachers are women, it would make sense to us in our research that there would be 77% or more of our principals, our site administrators would be women, but that was not the case at all. Actually, 54% of the principals in this nation are women, and out of those, 54%, the majority of those were elementary school principals. And it's interesting to note that 81% of the superintendents in this nation come from the secondary principalship. So you can already begin to see that the pathway for women in leadership does not lead them directly to executive leadership, such as the superintendency, and certainly does not reflect who we are in regards to our contributions as women in education as teachers. So let's take a look at the data in regards to superintendents. In 1971, 1% of the superintendents in this nation were females. And I don't like to date myself, but the reality of it was that I was in high school at that time. There's that concept, if a child can see it, they can believe it. And for me, as a student in high school in the early 70s, I certainly couldn't see it to believe it in regards to ever dreaming that I might become a superintendent, which indeed I did. I served as 14 years as the superintendent of the Ventura Unified School District. But certainly, as we can see from our data, that was against the odds. You can just take a look there at the screen yourself and see that certainly we have progressed, but we are nowhere near the almost 80% that we hold at the teaching level at the superintendent level. As a matter of fact, we've actually done some backsliding since 2015, which is obviously of concern as we think about gender equity and the fact that our children are watching. We want to make sure that the view that our children have is one of equity and access for each and every one. As I said, our research really was based on data as well as the research of stories. And we interviewed women across this nation, educational leaders, and really took the stories and our data and the research and categorized them into areas that included feminism, educational leadership, intersectionality, and cultural proficiency. We heard many a story, and I'll share a few of the quotes that we heard. A female superintendent said, "Don't mistake these tears for weaknesses. My emotions help make me strong, and this is my greatest strength." heard a lot of stories from women about their qualities of women somehow being projected as weaknesses when indeed those were their greatest strengths. A female director was told by her male assistant superintendent, "You're not ready yet. You wear your heart on your sleeve and you're going to have to make tough decisions." Once again, that common misperception that somehow wearing our heart on our sleeves or being sensitive makes us less than courageous or less than the strength that is required at the superintendency level. A female superintendent said, "I wonder if my male counterparts have ever been asked to consider dressing differently, though that was never a part of my contract agreement, but yet on my evaluation, I was actually evaluated on how I dressed." And many female leaders talked about being told to smile more. Gosh, they looked better with a darker color of lipstick. Don't wear your hair naturally. Make sure you wear high heels to this particular meeting. So we talked a lot and heard a lot about the appearance of women and how the inequity of being subjected to evaluation based on our appearance. A female principal was told by her supervisor, "I can't promote you now. You're too important for the work that you do in our department." We heard a lot of that because of the excellence of women and the excellence of their roles in education, that oftentimes people didn't want to lose them, and thus their promotions were inhibited and their promotions were minimized actually because of their importance in the roles that they currently held. A board member asked a recruiter, "How will she have time to be a superintendent, and who will take care of her children?" Heard an awfully lot about familial roles and gender stereotypes in regards to our place in the home. And I personally would say unapologetically our places in our homes as people who, those who choose to take care of children, or those who choose to have traditional roles in the homes, but that has nothing to do with our abilities to lead outside of the home and our ability to do that with confidence and competence. We looked at a lot of barriers, but we really got it down to about 8 to 10 very significant barriers that were a result of our research of the data and as well as the stories. So our time is so limited together in this very short and brief presentation, but I did want to just let you know that we found the traditional interview process was a barrier, often made by men and for men. Even found that sometimes we get in our own way, and we found that women lack confidence. We certainly don't lack the competence. Found interesting data that men apply for jobs if they meet 60% of the qualifications, but yet women wait to apply until they meet 100% of the qualifications. It's not that we don't have the competence. Right here at Cal Lutheran, the majority of our doctoral students and our master's students in educational leadership are women. Actually, the vast majority, I would say 80 to 90%. So we are very competent. We have prepared ourselves well, but oftentimes we don't apply because of our lack of confidence. So it's important for us to know as women so that we can promote each other and recognize that in ourselves as we recognize our competence. And have that carry along with our confidence. We also found that there were many delays along the way, certainly the delays of child rearing, childbearing, delays of caring for elderly parents, delays of following partners or spouses to other jobs and other communities. So many delays along the way. And again, I would say unapologetically, but most definitely a barrier in leadership for women. We found the cultural norms and the dual identities of women became a barrier, and just that cultural norm of are we strong enough? Do we have business acumen? Are we able to make tough decisions? And then again, those dual identities, how can she do this if she's a mother, if she's a wife, if she's a sister, if she's a daughter? So we definitely found those cultural norms and dual identities as barriers. Traditional pathways was an interesting concept. As I said earlier, we began as teachers Generally, we begin as elementary school teachers, and perhaps we become teacher on special assignment or mentor teacher, maybe a coordinator in curriculum, but it certainly isn't a pathway to the executive leadership role, whereas men generally begin as high school teachers. They become high school coaches, high school assistant principals, high school principals, and then boom, into the assistant sup of HR, and then into the possibly the superintendency. And again, 80%, or I think it was 81% of the superintendents in this nation started at the secondary level, were secondary principals. So you can see that those traditional pathways are definitely a barrier for women, and one that we need to be aware of as we promote and support each other, and also as we plan our own career paths. The myths about women qualifications came up again and again. Just again, that myth that we somehow lack the strength or lack the stamina or lack the courage. And certainly those are myths, because we have many, many female leaders throughout this nation who are doing fantastic jobs, along with their male allies and counterparts who are also doing fantastic jobs. We found a barrier that systems are generally not made for women. And so if that is the case, if systems are not made for women, then obviously women don't generally apply. An example would be the principal who has principals meetings that go on past 6:30, or we don't know when they're going to end. And you know, if that particular woman is one that needs to be home by 5 to pick up children from childcare and get dinner ready and baths and homework, systems are not made for women. So we have to be very, very conscientious and conscious of that, and making certain that absolutely that systems are made for women as well as men. And then finally, we found a lack of female mentors, and that is again is how might we be in the way as women to each other, that we don't generally mentor each other, we don't network like men do, and we don't sponsor each other like men do. And so we have a strong focus in our book about making certain that we as women are supporting each other in our roles as leaders currently as well as in the future. As I end this very short presentation, a beautiful quote by Maya Angelou that says, "Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women." So our book, Leading While Female, is one that we want to make sure that we are fixing the crowns of other women when their crowns are crooked, and perhaps without even telling them that their crown was crooked. That's our goal, is to support each other as women, to walk alongside our male allies and our colleagues, and make sure that when our children look up, that they can find themselves. If they can see it, they can believe it, and that they can find themselves in superintendent positions, executive leadership positions, and every child, whether they be male or female, can look up and find themselves. Thank you so much, and appreciate the opportunity, and most definitely appreciate the opportunity to be a part of Cal Lutheran University. Thank you.